Hey art friends, I wanted to kind of show off a couple of neat things that you can do with Clip Studio Paint. So what I've done here is I've just created sort of a new canvas. I think this is a postcard, whatever. So there's two things I'm going to kind of show off. First is the vector lines, which I believe I've talked about before, and then I'm also going to show you guys sort of the shortcut way of doing sort of cell style animation, or not animation, cell style shading, the quick and dirty way. So you may have seen me do this in a couple of my other videos. I wanted to share this with a friend of mine who was talking about this particular kind of shading, so let's kind of get to it. So first thing I'm going to do is show you guys a little bit about vectoring. Vectoring in Clip Studio Paint is very easy to do. If you can use the brush tools or the pens or whatever, you can vector, and that opens up some doors that you wouldn't normally have access to. So how do you create a new vector layer? Well, instead of creating like a new raster layer like you would normally do, there's a little icon right next to it that looks like, I'm not sure, it's like a smaller picture, but anyway, it's called a new vector layer. I always tend to create things in subfolders. It just makes it easier to organize later. But anyway, so what we're going to do is just draw something real quick here, just like a sphere, maybe a box or something. Nothing too crazy. Let me just get that done. All right, that's fine. So, okay, first thing that you've got with vector layers is, let's just zoom in here. Whoa. All right, you've got the ability to click on individual points, just like with any other vectoring tool. I'm not going to go into detail on that. There's plenty of documentation on how to use Clip Studio Paint's vector tools. But again, you've got a lot of options here. One of the cooler options, though, is if you're like me and you draw everything with like a stupidly thick line, because that's easier for you to work with or whatever. But in the future, you go, man, you know, that's too thick. Well, there's a vectoring option down here. So in this case, I'm going to use this subtool. It's called Correct Line. And it gives you a couple of options. You can either thicken the width or you can thin the width. And it gives you some options in terms of how to do that. Now, in this case, I've got something selected here called Process Whole Line, and I'll show you the difference between that. So first of all, I'm going to show you what this does. So first of all, you can still use your brush sizes. It doesn't really mean anything in this context. It's just a selection tool. And again, I'll show you what that means. So, but because I have this option selected here that processes the whole line, as soon as this brush intersects that line, you can maybe didn't see it get a little thinner, but if I keep doing it, oh yeah, all of a sudden you notice that that's way thinner than it was. So let's just kind of go back. Now, conversely, if I want to thicken the width, whoops, I didn't mean to select scale. Thicken width. Okay, so same concept. Now you're asking yourself, what about this, checkbox that you've selected down here, this process whole line? Well, obviously it processes the entire line. So this is where I'll show you what's happening here. So what's actually going on under the hood? So again, if you come down here and you select the line, you can see that there's control points. And what this is doing when you're not processing the whole line is it's reducing the thickness of the individual points, and then it works out the math between the points to give it sort of like an even tapering. So again, if you want to do tapering quick and dirty, this is a good way of doing it. And again, with the brush, you can sort of eyeball what kind of density or thickness you want to give it. So that's pretty handy, right? All right, so that's not the only cool thing I wanted to show off here today, because again, this can make some parts of your life a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to create another raster layer. And on this raster layer, I'm dropping the opacity because I'm just going to use black because I'm lazy. And then I'm going to go to this, what do you call it, figure subtool. So the figure subtool, normally, you've got your lines, you've got rulers, you've got some effects and stuff like that. I think by default, the ruler is selected. Now, don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But again, on this line tool, you'll see a whole bunch of options, and there's one that's close to the bottom called lasso fill. So talking about doing sort of like vector, or not vector, cell shading, one of the quickest ways of getting that cell shaded effect is to just use the lasso tool and draw the shadow that you want. Boom, we got ourselves a sphere. Let's add some shadow to this cube here. Obviously, there you go. Boom. So we've got ourselves some real quick and dirty cell shading. Now, why I prefer this over using the brush or by using the masking tools and then doing fills is it's a much more natural feeling tool. Like you can draw with it just like a pen. So any shape you can imagine. The other nice thing is it has sort of like that autofill thing. So if you know that you've got, like, say you wanted to make a straight line and do all that kind of stuff, you can just draw the arc and let it fill in its own stuff. So, you know, again, not the most technical terms, maybe not the best tutorial, but hey, quick and dirty, right? Anyway, I find this a kind of quick way of doing things, and again, for me, being able to adjust lines after I've drawn them is pretty handy. And again, in previous videos, I'm sure I've shown off vectors. If I haven't and you want to know more, please let me know. Thanks. Have a great day.